Greetings, friends, and welcome to Captain Samuel's Sensualities. Today we're going to be looking at Planet Story. It was published in 1979, written by Harry Harrison and illustrated by Jim Burns, and it is a sci-fi pulp novel with spoof comedy and blue comedy themes, and it's fully illustrated, and I do mean illustrated. It's got many full-page and double-page spreads of full-color art, and so rather than stare at my bearded mug for this review, let's look at some art while we hear what this book is all about. In Planet Story, the future is ruled by a dystopian military dictatorship called the United States of Earth. They are constantly at war with other planets and incessantly conquering other worlds. There's a permanent draft, and only people with special abilities are exempt from it. The story focuses on Private Parts, who has a problem. He emanates psychic waves that make anyone and anything, regardless of sex, gender, or species, want to have sex with him. He's a smart guy and initially escapes the draft by studying as a historian and xenobiologist, but when he turns down the sexual advances of an important official, they remove his draft exemption and he is forced to become a trooper. All his commanding officers want to have sex with him, and when he turns them down, they punish him. Eventually, as punishment, he is exiled to a remote planet named Strabismus, where the only other soldier stationed there is Colonel Killing, who tortures and kills his subordinates. When he arrives, Private Parts is able to trick Colonel Killing, and the post actually turns out to be a pleasant one for him, until a survey mission arrives. The survey team discovers that there's a valuable mineral necessary for the war effort on Strabismus. After this discovery, a second crew arrives and activates a device called the RAG, a gargantuan construction machine that automatically builds a railroad from the spaceport to the mining site. Private Parts then rides on a railroad train to the mining site with Admiral Sadi and sexy babe Lieutenant Foam. It's important to note that before they activated the RAG, they didn't bother to check if the planet was inhabited or not, so they just left the switch on uninhabited. Of course, the planet is inhabited, and it builds railroads through alien civilizations, which pisses off all the local natives. The rest of the book follows the characters' adventures as they ride the train from the spaceport across the planet to the mining site at the North Pole of the planet. What I especially love is that none of this was necessary. It would have been easier and totally possible to build another spaceport right by the mining site. The whole RAG machine and train engine ride only occur because the Admiral is a railroad enthusiast and wants to go for a train ride and build this railroad track just for shits and giggles. So, that's the plot, and personally, I love this book. This book goes after the military-industrial complex hard, and the reason for that is that Harry Harrison, the author, was drafted into World War II, and when the book was written, the disastrous Vietnam War had ended only 4 years before. It's full of great quotes and one-liners, and the comedy is mostly at the expense of the insanity, cruelty, and hypocrisy of war and the institutions that perpetuate it. Here's a few of my favorites. It did not take an historian to identify the pseudo-feudal, superficially imperial, obviously military-fascistic United States of Earth as a bad deal for anyone on the bottom of the pile. Later on, when they're discussing the discovery of the mineral that makes war effort possible, the characters have this exchange. "What's Lorsham?" Parts asked. "A bullying low IQ trooper like you would have no idea. It's a transplutonic element, the rarest. It's needed for the power plants in the big battleships. It makes war possible." "Tell them you didn't find it. Maybe the war will stop." "Are you out of your weensy mind? Without a war, I'd be out of a job." Yeah, I love this book. The comedy is great. As I mentioned, the entire reason everyone takes a hazardous cross-planet train trip is simply because the Admiral likes trains. He puts everyone in danger just to satisfy a hobby interest. He dresses in a train conductor outfit, and when things start to go poorly, he blames his subordinates for his decisions. He claims that the whole train idea was Private Parts' idea, and then decides that he isn't having fun anymore. So he changes out of his train conductor outfit, and to cheer himself up, changes into a uniform bedecked with medals. But in the process of changing, we see a weak and scrawny man underneath. Another thing I enjoyed about this book was how upfront and unapologetic the story was about homosexuality. Despite policies like don't ask, don't tell, LGBTQ plus people have always been part of the military, even though the military likes to pretend that isn't the case by making these people hide their true identities. The story is full of men coming on to private parts, and when he turns them down, he gets unfairly punished. Even though it was probably intended just as comedy, I still like how the book takes something the military likes to keep in the closet and puts it right out in the open. The action is great too. The story moves along at a rapid pace and is chock full of pulp sci-fi action-adventure sequences, plus a love romantic interest for private parts that is overdone as part of the humor. They encounter multiple types of aliens and need to problem solve all sorts of issues that go wrong on their train ride. So to wrap it up, Planet Story is an easy 5 stars and a welcome addition to my god-tier pantheon of top-tier books in my collection. It's a ludicrous spoof comedy of science fiction pulp that does a hard takedown of the military-industrial complex and war machines with great jokes and stunning art. I highly recommend it. Thanks for watching. Check this out. I'm going to give you a bonus book collecting tip at the end. So, with the exception of these Spatterlight Press books that I got off Amazon, pretty much everything in my collection is used. And you might have these in your collection too. They're called Lucky Books. And here's how to tell if you have a lucky book. So what you do is you take the book, take it on over to the bed, and then if you open the book right up, and it comes to a picture like that, and the spine is broken on that page, you probably have a lucky used book. And that's how you can tell that Kenneth definitely enjoyed this book before I did.